Hello friends. I can see 80% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. My name is Maribel Voss, and this is the story of how one man's cruelest words became the foundation of an empire he will never be able to touch. At 34 years old, I thought I had my entire life mapped out before me. I had what I believed was love, a husband who promised to stand by my side through thick and thin. We shared a cramped apartment where the walls were paper thin, and our dreams felt even more fragile. We were living from one paycheck to the next, scraping together enough money just to keep the lights on. But I had something burning inside me, a vision, a dream that kept me awake at night. I wanted to build something bigger than our circumstances, something that would lift us out of this endless cycle of barely surviving. But when the pressure mounted, when the bills started piling up like autumn leaves, when our bank account showed numbers that made my stomach churn, he did not stay. He could not handle the weight of our struggles. One cold evening in November, as rain hammered against our single window, he sat across from me on our worn-out couch. The same couch we had bought secondhand 3 years earlier, when we still believed in forever. His eyes held something I had never seen before. Cold determination. Finality. Maribel, he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. I cannot do this anymore. I felt my heart stop beating for what seemed like an eternity. Cannot do what? I whispered, though deep down I already knew. You have nothing, he continued, each word hitting me like a physical blow. I need someone who can keep up with me. Someone who can offer me a real future. Nothing. That single word burned into my soul like molten metal. It echoed in my mind, bouncing off every insecurity I had ever carried. Nothing. He stood up from our couch, the cushions still bearing the impression of his body, and began gathering his belongings with mechanical precision. I watched in stunned silence as he packed his clothes, his books, his coffee mug that read "World's Best Husband." The irony was not lost on me. Within 2 hours, he had taken half of our furniture, our television, the small dining table where we used to share breakfast, and every ounce of his so-called love. He walked out that door carrying all of his pride, leaving me behind with a mountain of overdue bills, a credit card that had been maxed out for months, and a refrigerator that hummed louder than my own rapidly beating heart. The silence that followed his departure was deafening. I sat on what remained of our couch, staring at the empty spaces where our life used to be. The walls seemed to close in around me, whispering his final words over and over again. You have nothing. But as I sat there in that hollow apartment, surrounded by the remnants of a broken dream, something inside me began to shift. A fire started burning in my chest, because what he did not know, what he could never have understood, was that I had one thing left, one thing he could never take from me: my stubbornness, my refusal to accept defeat, my absolute determination to prove him wrong. That night, I made myself a promise. I would show him exactly what nothing could become. I started small, incredibly small, with $50 to my name and a kitchen table that wobbled when I wrote on it. I began making candles. Not just any candles. These were going to be different. I spent hours researching different wax types, experimenting with essential oil combinations, creating scents that told stories. Every night, long after the world had gone to sleep, I worked by the light of my own creations. The apartment filled with the warm glow of dozens of candles, each one a small beacon of hope in my darkest hour. I could hear my neighbors outside, laughing and living their lives, while I carefully poured wax into mason jars, designing labels by hand, packaging each candle with the kind of care usually reserved for precious gifts. My first sale came through social media. A single candle for $12. When that notification appeared on my phone, I cried. Not from sadness, but from pure, overwhelming relief. Someone believed in what I was creating. Someone saw value in my work. Orders began to trickle in slowly at first. 1 candle here, 2 candles there. But each sale felt like a small victory against the voice in my head that whispered his words. You have nothing. I proved that voice wrong, one candle at a time. As weeks turned into months, something beautiful began to happen. My candles were not just products anymore. They had become symbols. I started naming them with intention, with purpose, with the kind of raw honesty that comes from having your heart broken. Survivor's Flame became my bestseller. A deep amber scent that smelled like resilience itself. Rise Again followed closely behind. A fresh, uplifting fragrance that seemed to whisper encouragement to everyone who lit it. Phoenix Wing captured the essence of transformation. Unbreakable carried notes of strength and determination. People were not just buying candles from me. They were buying pieces of my story. They were buying hope. They were buying the belief that they too could rise from their ashes. My customers began sharing their own stories. Women who had been left behind. Men who had lost everything in business ventures. People who had been told they were not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. But when they lit my candles, they remembered who they really were. Year 1 was about survival. Breaking even felt like climbing Mount Everest. Every dollar that came in went right back into supplies. Better packaging. Improved formulas. I lived on pasta and determination. I slept 4 hours a night and dreamed about success the rest of the time. But I was building something. Something real. Something mine. By year 2, everything changed. I had outgrown my kitchen table operation. I rented a small workshop space. Nothing fancy. Just 4 walls and a dream that refused to die. I hired my first employee. Then my second. Then my third. Each woman I brought onto my team had her own story of being underestimated. Each one had been told she was not enough in some way. Together, we became a force of nature. We were not just making candles anymore. We were creating a movement. A brand that stood for something deeper than profit margins. We represented every person who had ever been counted out. Every dreamer who had been called foolish. Every heart that had been broken but chose to keep beating. Year 3 brought expansion. We moved into a larger facility. Our product line grew to include room sprays, luxury gift sets, seasonal collections that sold out within hours of launch. I started getting calls from major retailers. Department stores wanted to carry our products. Online platforms featured us in their curated collections. The girl who once had nothing was now being courted by businesses worth billions. Year 4 was the year everything exploded. We launched internationally. Our candles were being sold in 12 countries. I hired a team of marketing professionals, operations managers, financial advisors who helped me navigate growth I had never imagined possible. The company that started on a wobbly kitchen table was now generating millions in revenue. I moved out of my tiny apartment into a house with more space than I knew what to do with. But success felt different than I had expected. It was not just about the money. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of more than anyone had ever believed, including me. Year 5 was magical. I stood in front of a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the city, 43 floors of glass and steel reaching toward the clouds, and watched as workers installed letters across the front entrance. VOSS YNTRPRICS. My name. My company. My empire. What had started as a humble candle business had evolved into a global lifestyle brand. We were selling everything from home fragrances to luxury bath products, wellness items to inspirational books written by women who had overcome impossible odds. We had become more than a company. We were a symbol of transformation, a testament to the power of refusing to accept other people's limitations. The day of our 5th anniversary celebration arrived like a dream I was afraid to wake up from. We were hosting a charity gala, a black tie event to raise money for women's entrepreneurship programs. The venue was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Tables were draped in silk and adorned with our signature candles. The guest list included business moguls, celebrities, politicians, influencers who had supported our journey from the beginning. I wore a dress that cost more than my rent used to be. My hair was styled by professionals. My makeup was flawless. But the most beautiful thing I wore that night was my confidence. The unshakable knowledge that I had built something extraordinary. As I mingled with guests, sharing stories about our company's mission, discussing future expansion plans, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Ms. Voss, one of my security team members said quietly, "There is a situation at the front entrance that requires your attention." I excused myself and walked toward the main doors, my heels clicking against marble floors that reflected the warm glow of hundreds of candles. Through the massive windows, I could see the velvet ropes that separated our exclusive event from the public street. And there, standing behind those ropes, looking older, heavier, desperately trying to convince our door staff to let him inside, was my ex-husband. My breath caught in my throat. Time seemed to slow down as I watched him gesture frantically, his voice rising as he explained to anyone who would listen that he knew me, that he used to be married to me, that surely there had been some mistake. I moved closer to the window, close enough to see the desperation in his eyes, close enough to hear fragments of his conversation with security. "Please, you do not understand," he was saying. "I know Maribel personally. We were married. She would want me here." The security guard, a professional woman in a crisp black suit, shook her head politely but firmly. "Sir, this is an exclusive event with a guest list that was finalized weeks ago. Without an invitation and proper identification as an approved guest, I cannot allow you entry." "How much does it cost?" he asked, pulling out his wallet. "I can pay for a ticket right now." The security guard's expression softened slightly. "Sir, tickets for tonight's gala were $5,000 each. The event sold out 3 months ago." I watched his face crumble. His shoulders sagged as the reality hit him. He could not afford to enter the world I had built. The empire he had dismissed as impossible was now so far above his reach. It might as well have been on another planet. I stood there for several minutes, watching the man who had once called me nothing, realize that he was now the one with nothing to offer. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. The woman he had abandoned because she could not keep up with him had built something so magnificent that he could not even afford to be in the same room. I thought about going outside. I thought about confronting him. I thought about letting him know I was watching. But then I realized something beautiful. He was not worth my energy anymore. Not my anger. Not my attention. Not even my pity. I turned away from the window and walked back into my celebration. Back to my guests. Back to my success. Back to the life I had built from the ashes of his rejection. Later that evening, as the gala wound down, I found myself alone on the executive balcony of my building. The city sparkled below me like a constellation of possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Maribel, I saw the article about your company in Forbes. I always knew you had it in you. Would love to catch up sometime." I read the message twice. Then I deleted it without responding. Some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt. Some chapters are not meant to be reopened. Some people do not deserve the privilege of witnessing your transformation. I raised my champagne glass to the night sky, to the city that had become my kingdom, to the woman I had become against all odds, and whispered the words that had carried me through every impossible moment. "Nothing, huh?" I smiled as I remembered his voice that terrible night 5 years ago. The certainty in his tone when he declared my worthlessness. The coldness in his eyes when he walked away. "Look at me now," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Look at what nothing became." The wind carried my words out over the city, over the empire I had built from stubbornness and determination, over the proof that other people's opinions of your worth mean absolutely nothing when you know who you are capable of becoming. I finished my champagne and walked back inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow, new ways to expand the empire that started with a single candle on a wobbly kitchen table. But tonight, I was simply grateful. Grateful for the rejection that forced me to find my strength. Grateful for the man who showed me exactly what I did not want in my life. Grateful for the pain that taught me how powerful I could become. Because sometimes the most beautiful revenge is not hurting the person who hurt you. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge is becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so absolutely magnificent, that their opinion of you becomes completely irrelevant. I built an empire from the word nothing. And he cannot even afford to enter its doors. That is not just success. That is poetry. If this story inspired you to never give up on your dreams, no matter who doubts you, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of transformation, resilience, and ultimate success. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful journeys that prove anything is possible when you refuse to accept other people's limitations.